Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #LAW, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. A warmer from below. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you, as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by our good friend Justin Perri over at Chalk Wally Bets. We're going to take a look at just some of the ins and outs of conference play, how to prepare for these insane college basketball Saturdays like we just had, some of the ways that he is taking a look at these teams that he's going to be looking to bet and fade, some of the big things to take a look at in terms of your handicapping as well with regards to college basketball, and then we'll be touching upon that North Texas versus Memphis game. A lot of just general ins and outs talks of college basketball. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very informative, and that's going to be coming up in the second segment. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to those in. First one is by Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, RCM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Saturday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Thought that this was interesting on Saturday. Games involving ranked teams, whether that be the unranked team as a favorite or the favorite being the ranked team. So just a favorite in the game in general involving a ranked team. They went 11-2 against the spread, and you saw that very much taking hold in the SEC as it started off early with Kentucky winning 106-100. I can tell you right now, I did not think that both of these teams were going to get to 100, but Florida now 10-4 against the spread. By the way, the lone 3 teams are below 500 against the spread in the SEC right now. Missouri, South Carolina, they lost by 35 points against Mississippi State and Arkansas. And Arkansas, you're going to get to them in a few minutes, but that was less than savory. But for Kentucky, 14 out of 29 from three-point range. Kobe Bryant, 7 of 9 from distance, 23 points off the bench. Florida wins a rebound battle, 38-30. They lose the turnover battle, though, by kind of 9-6. They just could not get in front of Brea, and for Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, they combined for 59 points in this game, but not enough with the way that this team was able to shoot from three-point range in Kentucky. You saw number 1 Tennessee take it to Arkansas, is now 4-10 against the spread, 76-52 the final, just stifling defense from Tennessee in this one. You also had Arkansas go 6 of 13 at the free throw line, but the Chaz Lanier continues to be tremendous, 29 points, but how about Igor Milicic and his versatility? 13 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists, and for Arkansas, they go just 6 of 29 from three-point range. DJ Wagner, Boogie Flan had a combined 29 points, and nobody decided to help them out in this one. Houston, they were able to jump all over BYU if you're looking a little bit more at the Big 12. This by a count of 86-55, as this was just a complete and utter bludgeoning for BYU. They are unable to just really hold on to the ball. 15 turnovers in this game. Houston, they had just 11. Houston won the rebound battle 37-24 as Emmanuel Sharp lived up to his name, 18 points. So he was very sharp, going 4 of 8 from three-point range, and Houston as a whole, 16 out of 34 from three-point range. So that was a big, giant explosion as this game was anything but that. Ole Miss, they do a tremendous job defensively on Georgia, 63-51 final in this one. For Georgia, they lose the turnover battle, 15-13. Austin Noel was able to give the team 13 points, 13 rebounds, but not a lot of help outside that. Meanwhile, Matthew Morrell, Jamin Brakefield, they both had 15 points for Ole Miss, so they were able to find a way to get the job done out there. Your top team in terms of against the spread record in the Big 12 would actually be Arizona State, as the Sun Devils have had themselves a nice year, and they were able to take it to Colorado. 81-61 the final. Colorado now by the way, just goes 3 of 24 from 3. They're 6-7 against the spread. But for Arizona State, how about a 13 of 28 three-point shooting burner as you had B.J. Freeman go off for 19 points. Bashir Jihad, he had 17 points. For Arizona State, they do lose the turnover battle 17-14, but they win the battle on the glass 38-34. So another great day for them. And I might have actually said Arizona instead of Arizona State. Well, the Arizona Wildcats have had a pretty miserable year in terms of being able to get the job done against better competition. They did on this day, 72-67 the final, and for Cincinnati, does feel like a little bit of a paper tiger team. Really good metrics, but came against lesser competition. Then in the step-up game, 5 of 25 from 3 and 12 of 23 at the free throw line. That is why they lost this game. Dan Skillings did provide the team with 18 points, and Caleb Love only won 3 of 15 from the floor. He did throw in there 12 points, 6 boards, but when was able to bail out Arizona in this one off the bench, 12 big points out of Carter Bryant, and then you had 15 points from Jaden Bradley, as well as Arizona goes with 5 of 14 from three-point range, and they lose the turnover battle 12-11. They lose the rebound battle 39-34, but Cincinnati, with those missed free throws, really stubbed their toe there. Kansas State, been a rough year for them. 5-8 against the spread. They actually do get the cover in this one, as TCU is now 4-9 against the spread, and TCU, they got a 63-62 win, but just continues to be mediocre for Kansas State, to say the least, as in this one you had all but one of your starters give you double figures, and David Ngesson, 17 rebounds, as Kansas State won the rebound battle 47-36, but they lost the turnover battle 12-6, and Emmanuel Ude was able to supply TCU with 12 rebounds, and Noah Reynolds, 18 points. Had a lot of intrigue out there in Texas Tech. 93-65 winners over Utah. They're going to be interesting to see moving forward, to say the least. And one of the better fates in all of college basketball is in Oklahoma State. And one of the better stories is right now West Virginia. West Virginia, 69-50 winners. They cover that line easily. And for Oklahoma State, just 3 of 21 from three-point range. Javon Small comes up big, 24 points, 11 rebounds. You didn't have Tucker DeVries out there. They would deal with the injury to Omari Hansberry. He was able to play in this one off the bench for 13 minutes, so a little bit limited there, and yet team still gets the job done. Also being able to get the job done, Iowa State, 74-55 winners over Baylor, as they went 10 of 21 from three-point range, and Iowa State has actually been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball this season as well, but the defense still very much stifling, as Baylor, not a lot going for them. 7 of 29 from three-point range. Only 8 turnovers, so they protected the ball, but still didn't do a ton there. And Baylor, 8 overs and 4 unders for them. By the way, Texas Tech, going back to them, they are now up to 9 overs, 3 unders, and a push. You also have the best under team in all of college basketball being in the Big 12. We'll be seeing them on display on Sunday in Kansas. 1 over and 11 unders, and Cincinnati, 2 overs and 11 unders. So we've had a lot of intrigue with regards to totals out there in the Big 12 and out there in the SEC. We've also had a lot of intrigue with regards to totals as well, as we have yet to hit upon the fact that Auburn, they got the win, no cover, as they were needing to cover about 18-18.5 in this one against Missouri, but still a rock solid performance out of them. They're able to get the job done, this by a count of 84-68, and for Missouri, they did have Marcus Ward go off for 19 points. Geni Broom just continues to clean up. He was able to supply for his Player of the Year race, 24 points, 4 blocks, 7 rebounds. For my opinion, if you had a Player of the Year vote, had to go with Geni Broom right now. 10 of 21 from distance for Auburn. They did turn the ball over 16 times in this game and actually lost the rebound battle 31-29, but absolutely white hot from three-point range, as Chad Baker-Mazara was able to throw in their 13 points as well. So number one is able to maintain with regards to your top under team out there in the SEC. That'd be Texas A&M, and they take it to Texas. This by a count of 80-60, as this was a game that fell under the total as well. As for Texas, Draymond Mark was able to supply the team with 14 points, but just too much A&M on the boards. For Texas A&M, they win that rebound battle 41-31. They win the turnover battle 12-7, and for Texas in this one, you had Trey Johnson, the star freshman, have 11 points on 13 field goal attempts, so that's a little bit less than tremendous. While Zarique Phillips, Wade Taylor, they were able to combine for 31 points, so they did a rock-solid job being able to get the job done out there. And for Oklahoma, they entered into the day undefeated. Well, they left defeated. 107-79. Alabama absolutely takes it to them. For Alabama, they didn't even really shoot it well from three-point range. 9 of 29 from the outside, but you had Grant Nelson go off for a double-double, 12 points, 11 rebounds. Mark Sears a double-double, 10 assists, 22 points off the bench. You had Aiden Holloway be able to supply the team with 10 points, and for this Oklahoma team, they lose a rebound battle 51-26. That's where the size that was brought in by the transfer portal by Alabama was really able to show up. Also being able to really show up. How about Gonzaga? It's not necessarily been the most savory year against the spread for them, but they were able to take it all over Loyola Marymount. This by kind of 96-68. Gonzaga is still a less than 500 team against the spread at 7-9, but this is a step in the right direction for them as they were able to go 7 of 16 from 3-point range, but more importantly, they were able to do a great job in terms of that turnover battle. 14-6, won the rebound battle 39-32 as getting a double-double. Ryan Nembhard, 10 points, 11 assists, just 2 turnovers in this game, and for the Mount, they shoot just 38% from the floor as Gonzaga has actually been relatively solid with regards to their defense thus far this season. A team has been pretty rock solid as well. How about Duke? They absolutely lay it on SMU, 89-62 final in this one, and for SMU, they went just 5 of 24 from 3, and here this was something that was big as well. 11 of 25 at the free throw line, SMU is losing this game, even if they go 25 of 25 at the free throw line, but didn't even give themselves a shot there. Meanwhile, it was Flag Day. 24 points, 11 rebounds. Cooper Flag's three-point shot is really coming along for the ride as well. That was a lone gripe that I had with him towards the beginning part of the season. He went 2 of 2 from distance in this one. Concadepo, he throws in their 14 points. Tyrese Proctor, 4 of 7 from 3-point range. Just complete and utter domination over there by a Blue Devils team that's actually done a relatively solid job against the spread as well. 9-5 against the spread. That is the top mark in the ACC, tie with Pittsburgh and Florida State. And Florida State, they were able to go out there on Saturday and they were able to get the job done. They got a quality win. They got a quality cover against Syracuse. That by kind of 90-74 on your worst team against the spread right now in the ACC. The 4-10 against the spread Miami Hurricanes. They are 0-2 against the spread without Jim Larranaga. They had the lead throughout in this one, then they made like your buddy at the bar could not close. They were up 4 points with less than 90 seconds remaining. Virginia Tech pulls this one out by kind of 86-85, so the misery just continues for them. That has been very much less than tremendous. Clemson, one of your top teams out there in the ACC as well. A win but no cover against Cal by a count of 80-68. That line was right around about 14.5. And North Carolina, non-cover for them. They're now 5-10 against the spread, but did avoid the loss. 74-73. They pull it out against Notre Dame. And for this North Carolina team, it's been tradition that they've been really bad in the first half and then really good in the second half. They flipped it this time. 39-32. They led at the half, and then 35-41. They were outscored in the second half with Marcus Burton making his return for Notre Dame. He threw in there 25 points to be able to lead the way for them. UCLA has been really one of your top Big Ten teams thus far this season, but they go on the road and they lose to the home favorite Nebraska. This by a count of 66-58. And for UCLA, one of your top defenses in all of college basketball, they did their part. They allowed Nebraska to shoot 32.5% from floor, 7 of 25 for 3, but they went 4 of 28 from 3-point range and lost the turnover battle by a count of 15-13. And Bryce Williams has been very good for this Nebraska team thus far this season. He was able to throw in there 16 points in Nebraska, now 9-5 against the spread thus far this season. The team that is right now leading the way in terms of worst cover teams in all of college basketball, that would be old Minnesota. We did not see them on action on Saturday. We are actually going to be seeing them within the next few days, but I said they are currently 1-11-2 against the spread. USC has been pretty brutal as well. They are now 5-9 against the spread, and Michigan got the job done on the road, 85-74. Looked like USC was going to be able to have a nice little surge in them as they actually, I believe, took the lead in this game towards the back half of it as well. They were up 65-63 with 7:33 remaining, and then for Michigan, they were able to go on a nice run to be able to close the game. As for Michigan, Danny Wolf throws in their 21 points, and this Michigan team goes 10 of 24 from 3-point range. They do lose the turnover battle by a count of 14-12, but they did have Danny Wolf go off for that double-double, 21 points, 13 rebounds, threw in their 7 assists as well. And for USC, they were unable to really get a lot from 3-point range at 6 of 18 from distance, and also went 14 of 22 at the free throw line. That has been really not going so great for them. Do have to throw this in there from Friday. We did see one of the winless teams at all of college basketball, Chicago State. They went on the road and they got the job done against Wagner, so that was not great for Wagner. That by kind of 64-52. And then you also saw that Wisconsin game on Friday where they went and got the win 116-85. Wisconsin, been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball thus far this season. And if you're looking at just teams of intrigue in general in terms of being able to cover numbers, St. Bonaventure, the Bonnies, they have been your best cover team in the country at 13-1. Fairleigh Dickinson has been number 2. We are going to be seeing them in action on Sunday. They're 10-2 against the spread, but the Bonnies just keep things rolling. 86-66. They absolutely dismantle Fordham in this one as they go 9 of 19 from three-point range. For Fordham, they did go 10 of 27 from three with Jackie Johnson throwing in there 21 points, but for the Bonnies, they win the rebound battle 34-27. They win the turnover battle 13-9. So a nice, clean, easy win for them. So they have really been leading the way. And Houston Christian also now 10-2 against the spread. Haven't really been winning a lot of games outright on the money line or anything like that, but another quality cover against Lamar. They lose that game by kind of 63-61, by the way. Houston Christian is 4-10 straight up, and I'm pretty sure that one or two of those games came against non-D1 foes, but they went 8 of 24 from three-point range, lost the turnover battle 17-7, so that was a little bit of an issue, but hey, yay Fairleigh for Houston Christian being able to make you some money. Another team has been able to make you quite a bit of money thus far this season. How about Idaho State? They are another team that they've lost, but got a nice quality cover this coming against Northern Colorado. They were 8.5-point dogs. Game goes to overtime. They lose by a count of 93-92. Dylan Darling, the transfer from Washington State, threw in there 22 points, and for Idaho State, they go 11 of 25 from three-point range in this one, just 4 of 16 for Northern Colorado, but Langston Reynolds, 13 of 15 from the floor. He hit the only three that he shot in this one, but for Idaho State, they hold in there by winning the rebound battle 32-27. So that was a game of intrigue, to say the least. Another team has been able to make you a lot of money. How about Elon and what the Phoenix have been able to do? They are now 10-3 against the spread. They go out there against Hampton, and they play a 70-62 game. A lot of places had this between an 8 to an 8.5. So if you had an 8.5, this was a loss for you. If you had an 8, this game was a push. I think that the closing numbers at the place I utilized these against the spread tools from Team Rankings did grade this one as a loss, but Elon has been one of those quality cover teams. Vanderbilt, team that I really haven't touched upon, they're now 11-3 against the spread as well. They go on the road, they get the job done against LSU, that by a count of 80-72, as for Vanderbilt, just such good positionless basketball right now for this unit. They go just 8 of 26 from three-point range, but they win that turnover battle 15-9. They win the rebound battle 37-27. Devin McLaughlin down low was able to give the team 10 rebounds, so a nice quality performance out of them. And how about this team being able to give you some quality performances as well? Detroit is now against the spread 12-4. They lose at home to UW Milwaukee 64-56, but they were catching 9.5. Another nice cover there, and they've had a lot of nice surges late in games to be able to get covers as well, as they have been quite tight in terms of a lot of these games. So that has been fun to be taking a look at Oregon State after they had lost 4 straight games against the spread. They were on a 10-0 against the spread run to begin the season. They were able to get back on track on Saturday. They were able to get the job done with a quality win and cover 81-54 against San Diego. Toreros not been having a great year, to say the least, and another team has been not having such a great year against the spread. How about Grand Canyon? They do get the outright win against Southern Utah, but they were laying 15-plus points in this one. Southern Utah gets to cover 82-71. Good news for Grand Canyon is that Tyon Grant Foster has been miserable from three-point range this year. Entered the day shooting 12% from distance. Did go 3 of 5 from three-point range, but Grand Canyon being a little bit overvalued in the market right now, and throughout the season, St. Mary's has been overvalued in the market, but on this day, they do get the job done, 81-58. The final, they were laying 18.5. They cover that, so now they are 4-10 against the spread. A team that is 2-10 against the spread might not be one that you expect. It's out there in the SWAC, as it has been a very much a less than savory season for Texas Southern, and for Texas Southern, they lose on their home floor to Southern by a count of 67-58. For Southern, they go 12-27 from 3. A nice hearty 5 of 18 from Texas Southern, and Texas Southern, typically a team that does a really good job on the glass, lost the rebound battle 39-37, so very much less than savory out there. Mississippi Valley State, well, they have been very much less than savory as well. They are scoring more than 10 points fewer per 100 possessions than the next least efficient offense in all of college basketball. 84-55, they lose to Alabama State, and there was one point in this game where Mississippi State looked like they were going to be a game opponent. They had things tied up with about 6:19 remaining in the first half, and then straight down the toilet bowl she goes. So that's been a little bit less than tremendous. And out there in the state of Oklahoma, you've got some pretty not profitable teams, as Oklahoma State, who I went through a little bit before, they are now 3-10 against the spread. That is tied with Tulsa, is also 3-10 against the spread, as this has just not been a great year for the Golden Hurricane. They lose 83-51 against UAB, as the Blazers lit them ablaze. For Tulsa, they lose the turnover battle in this game 14-11. They lose the rebound battle 43-35, and at this point they're just looking for answers, as that was not great to say the least. Needless to say, the Eric Conkle era not been tremendous out there. New Hampshire has been a little bit less than tremendous as well, as this is a New Hampshire team that is now 3-11 against the spread, and I mean, don't look now, but Vermont has not been very profitable for you this season as well. But for New Hampshire on Saturday, they go out there and they lose to Vermont, who I mentioned before, 60-40 in a game that was an almighty slog. As for New Hampshire, they go 13 of 46 from the floor with 19 turnovers. Vermont, they won that turnover battle 19-8. They actually lose a rebound battle 36-32, but Vermont perseveres. They find a way to be able to get the job done. And Cal State Fullerton, they're 4-10 against the spread, and I'm surprised that they've got 4 covers at this point, because they got completely bludgeoned on Saturday. They lose at home to UC San Diego, who's been great, by the way, 90-51. Their second straight home loss of north of 35 points. Like, this team is getting dump trucked right now. For Cal State Fullerton, they shoot 33% from the floor. They still have no point guard, and they had 21 turnovers in this game. By the way, I was talking about Vermont. They've been less than savory against the spread, 4-11 for them. Weber State is now finding themselves at 3-9-1 against the spread. They were unable to get the win against Northern Arizona, though some places closed this more around about a 3.5. I saw a lot of 2.5, 3 out there. Northern Arizona 80-77 winners over them, and then it's been a less than savory year as well for our good friend Sam Houston State. They've been able to cash in quite a few overs because they're playing no defense, but they take another L, 81-72 against UTEP. Sam Houston State was closing as about a 5.5 point underdog, so they were unable to cover that one. And UW Green Bay, they are now 5-12 against the spread, but boy, oh boy, ever since the December calendar tweet by Doug Gottlieb, I think that they've only covered one game, because this has just not been good, to say the least. They lose to Northern Kentucky 78-60 on the road, as UW Green Bay does go 13-26 from 3. They still only manage 60 points because they lose the turnover battle 13-8. They lose the rebound battle 38-25. And there's the old saying of when you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got none. Well, typically when you got a part-time radio show host and you've got a college basketball coach, you just don't really have either of those right now as well. By the way, for Mississippi Valley State, getting back to them, they are now 3-9 against the spread, so they've been a team full of intrigue. I've went through some of the best teams to the under in all of college basketball. How about if we take a look at South Dakota and the fact that they are now 12-2 to the over thus far this season, and they had another overwhelming game on Saturday. As for South Dakota, they get the job done against Denver, this by a count of 91-84, though I will give some kudos to Denver. They were a 9.5 point underdog. Looked like this game was going to be very much going into the abyss. They were down 11 points with 5:50 remaining. They do get the cover there, but another just massive over in that game. By the way, for Northern Arizona, now 9 overs at 2 unders for them this far this season, so they've been able to cash you some tickets with regards to the over train, and so has Villanova. Villanova plays at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball, but they're playing very efficient right now. 11 overs to 3 unders with a push thrown in there as well. 100-56. They just completely demolished DePaul. The nation's leading scorer, Eric Dixon, he remains there. He supplies the team with 25 points. For DePaul, just 7 of 27 from 3-point range. 16 out of 27 for Villanova in this one from distance, and they win the turnover battle 12-7. So a very great performance them. St. John's, they get the win, but no cover against Butler. This by a count of 70-62. St. John's starting to lock in a little bit more defensively, so some kudos to them. But that said, this was a game where Butler did have Pierre Brooks go off for 17 points, with Butler catching double figures. A nice, clean, quality cover there. And then if you are looking at another team that has been very rock solid to the under thus far this season, how about the Governators of Austin Peay? Just 2 of their games have gone over the total thus far this season, and they lose to Jacksonville 68-44. So a nice quality slog out there, with Austin Peay going 4 of 28 from 3-point range. Jacksonville goes 5 of 11 from the outside, but needless to say, that game was pretty sad, to say the least. And Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, well, the offense in their games thus far this season have been very stone cold. As for Stephen F. Austin, they played themselves yet another big giant slog on Saturday as they lose on their home floor to Incarnate Word 55-49. As for Incarnate Word, they go 5 of 25 from 3. Stephen F. Austin 2 of 18 from 3. Both teams just 11 turnovers in this game, but this was a badly slowed down game with absolutely no offense whatsoever doing for either of these teams, and not a lot of offense doing for the Purple Aces of Evansville either. As for Evansville, they end up falling to Indiana State, who's been really one of your top over teams in all of college basketball. Indiana State, just their second under of the season, 66-62 the final in this one, as for Evansville, they allow Indiana State to go 7-23 from 3, while they went 7-20 from the outside, but they also did not do a great job of being able to guard off the bench Jaden Daughtry, who gave the team 26 points. Evansville actually won the rebound battle and the turnover battle, but unable to get the job done outright there. Bradley, a win, but no cover as your nation's top three-point shooting team, 69-60 the final. This game goes well under the total, with Bradley regressing a little bit with their three-point shooting, going 7 of 20 from distance out there. And then Arkansas Pine Bluff has been a very intriguing team in that they've got 9 overs to 3 unders. They have been really giving it up on defense thus far this season, and they gave it up once again, 89-79 the final. Alabama A&M gets the job done. This total closes 163.5. This total goes over the total line. If you're looking at the trends that we are seeing in college basketball right now, well, we have been getting ourselves a nice little bit of an overwhelming season thus far. Overall, for the entirety of the season, the overs are hitting at about 50.1%, 1,183 overs to 1,176 unders, but what's really been cashing has been the underdogs. Overall for the season at 50.8%, 1,200, 1,160, and 36 against the spread, but we've been seeing a little bit of a reversal of this over the last 7 days. Last 7 days, favorites 171, 160, and 6 against the spread, hitting at 51.7%, and the unders hitting at a 52.5% clip over the last 7 days, 173 unders to 157 overs. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Saturday. Now let's talk about some of the things that you want to take a look at with regards to handicapping with our good friend Justin Perri of Shot Quality Bets. Next right here on Cuz Seats with myself, David Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cuz Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast, and it is always a pleasure to be joined by this man, as we've got Justin Perri aboard. He does such tremendous work over at Shot Quality Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Additionally, he does such an amazing job when it comes to diving in over at Action Network on so many different things. The Justin Perri Show is a must listen as well. We need to get the Park Walk picks back, but that said, everything else has been so on point with Justin. He does an absolutely incredible job. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Justin Perri. That last name is spelled Perri, the number 8 all together. And Justin, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Greg, so much fun to be here on the show every single time. College basketball, the second half of the season, the conference season in full swing here as we recorded on the first big Saturday of 2025. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to everybody who tunes into the show. So excited to start diving into a lot of these conference matchups, maybe trying to figure out which of these non-con resumes were true and really can predicate results, or which ones are a little fraudulent, and where can we try to find some value beating the market to realizing what some of these teams are, especially in the mid-majors and low-major conferences.
Absolutely. And Justin, before we dive in on any specific teams, any specific games in general, just how do you set things up now that we've got conference play back in our lives? Because it just, in my opinion, with college basketball becomes a little bit more staggered because, well, you want to be placing a lot of attention on all these games, what have you. As we both know, you have to sell it a little bit more for these Saturdays because you've got 135 plus games that are happening every Saturday, whereas we're going to have like a slate on Monday that is going to have less than 20 games. These Fridays are very bare, and it just becomes very unbalanced with regards to the amount of games that you get on Saturday compared to everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think people like you and I who originate have a much easier time with this, Greg, because I can tell you what my line is going to be for any team that just doesn't have another game between now and then, right? As long as they're not going to play again and I'm not going to collect new data on a team, I can tell you how they should match up against any other team that I'm not going to collect new data against, depending on where they are and all that stuff. That is all very easy for me. So my Saturday picks are very much in the works Friday. I think that at this point they have to be. I was chatting with my coworker at Shot Quality today, and you spend 1 minute on every single game today. You're spending 2 hours and another 15 minutes. That's 1 minute per college basketball game. You want to go 10 minutes per college basketball game, you're talking 20 plus hours of prep. So yeah, it's not really humanly possible to have a grasp on every single game. It takes time. So you have to start early. You have to have the time to do it. And yeah, I had plays locked in early, like 10 a.m. on Friday. So waiting for lines to drop is almost half the fun as figuring out where I'm going to have my edge. But I think that's the biggest one. Otherwise, you're definitely trying to do something that is challenging, even for the likes of you and me. It is an exhausting grind getting out my 40 something plays after making sure that all my numbers are correct, not missing anything. I don't really tread lightly with it. It is a financial risk. So while I could just, fire from the model, I always like to give everything a light check and make sure all's right and there's no errors. And it took a while, and that's just what it is. So yeah, just it's 33% of your week in one day. So you just treat it like that.
Yeah, but honestly, if you do the math, it's actually more than 30% of your week. It's just insane. It's actually closer to 50% because you're going to be getting now on these Saturdays about 150 games on them. So just wild. Compare that to a Thursday where you get like 70 games. The Tuesdays are typically about 30. You get those Mondays and Fridays where you get a few games there as well. It is very much insane to be taking a look at, as Justin Perri, who does such great work over at Shock Value Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And just when it comes to this time of year, are there certain teams that you want to be backing / fading? Because we now have some set data on these teams, but as we know, with regards to in a lot of cases for these teams, 12, 13 or so game sample sets, there can be a lot of outliers, and there are some teams that they just really thrive outside the conference that when they get in conference, they make like your buddy at the bar and they can't close out, and they go from being like 12-1, 13-2, something like that, to completely missing the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, our easy answer to that over at SQ is probably regression. Trying to find the teams that are distinctly overperforming their results. And I think it sounds simple, but imagine it from the side where maybe you don't have the X-ray vision that we like to attest to be at Shot Quality, where you just see the shots that are being made, like the most people who handle basketball data. Oh, this team is shooting 37% from behind the line. Like, how good are they expected to be doing? Why, would anyone who just seeing a team get hot for a few games just be like, oh, well, they should be 5% worse? A lot of people don't necessarily think that way, and the market doesn't necessarily think that way. Efficiency models don't necessarily think that way. There are luck factors built into these things, but not to the same extent as understanding the true quality of the shot underneath the hood when teams get hot or cold. So when you do have a team that overperforms for a sustained amount of time, maybe multiple games in a row, good shooting at home, and then going on the road and being in a distinct spot to underperform, being able to capitalize on those types of scenarios are massive, and being able to sort of see through some of those performances and really understanding where teams are actually developing valuable shots. And, that does come down to the threes, like I said. So 3-point regression is big. But also, the other side of that is like paint touches. How often are you getting in the paint? And how often is that leading to points in the paint, right? If your points in the paint conversion is bad, you're probably more likely than not getting unlucky. It's not really more than just bad rolls, a bad bounce. These things do even out over time. So my strategy going into the conference is trying to figure out, where can I find those teams that are just not getting the rolls, but are getting the good looks, because good looks win out long-term over good rolls.
Absolutely. I think that is so key to be taking a look at. And how much you take a look at some of the little things as well, because some of the things that I've been taking a look at are some of these teams with like a main point guard, a guy that's doling out 5 to 6 assists per game. These are the teams I'm looking to back. Meanwhile, I just love fading these teams that they don't have that set point guard. When I take a look at things that it's like, wow, they don't have a single guy that gives you north of like 2.2, 2.3 assists per game. That always to me is a red flag, because that tells me that the offense is very stagnant, and whatever they get on offense from night to night is going to be very inconsistent. And those are teams I really can't count on. Meanwhile, when you've got a main facilitator that's doling it out, like a Quinnipiac, for example, is a team that I'm going to be looking at a little bit more with Savion Lewis coming back. Those are the sorts of teams that I want to be backing much more.
Yeah, assists are very reliable. And what you want to do at the end of the day is evaluate that talent alongside what they actually create. And I'm not the type of analyst who can rattle off every single roster. I think we have a benefit of what we do at SQ, where the talent of the players is intrinsically tied to our stuff. And that is what makes it so special, is that SQ isn't player agnostic, meaning we do have the specifics about how each player plays. And so usage is filtered through skill, which means we get the most accurate picture possible. But to your point, that doesn't mean we don't necessarily understand the structures that create good basketball. Quite the opposite. And you're right. I mean, especially in the high major, and you start getting into the middle of the pack, top 175 teams or so, guard play becomes hyper crucial, because essentially you're talking about the aspects of college basketball that you can control are all featured in guard play. Free throw shooting. I mean, you and I know, as people who bet thousands of college basketball games a year, how often a bet is decided by free throw shooting. And having a guard that can both distribute and get to the line is what can elevate a team dramatically, because you not only need to be able to get to the line, distribute, but then you also need to be able to hit your free throws. So like, I love betting against teams that are at the bottom of free throw make percentage, because they could have a 7-point lead, and if the other team's in the single bonus, like that could be 2 free possessions on the 1-and-1. And that's very easy to cut a 7-point lead to a 2-point lead and change an entire final 2 minutes of a game. Yeah, guard play is really important. The guys who have the ball in their hands off the inbounds, who are going to get those crucial fouls, who are going to be sent to the line, how good are they at dribbling out of the trap? How good are they at handling full court pressure? It's all very important, especially at the lower levels, where like defensive schemes can really impact a team's ability to score, especially a road team in conference play. You run into the wrong scheme on the road in conference, and you can end up looking like Dayton.
Oh, yeah. And I think that you brought up something so good with that free throw shooting. I want to expand upon that a little bit more, because I think that's very situational for me with regards to free throw shooting, because when you lay 6 points with a team and they're shooting less than 65% of the free throw line, there's no greater form of Dante's Inferno than that. Going through, oh no, Captain Mick Uncoordinated Jr. at 7 feet tall is a 45% free throw shooter, and my -6 is online here. Meanwhile, I'm a little bit more willing to take like 6-7 points with a team that's a bad free throw shooting team, because if they're going to the line in the lead, if you're catching 6 points, even if they miss some free throws, they're going to be fine. How much do you want to utilize some of these stats situationally with regards to these bets? Because I think free throw shooting is a prime example of it, being more willing to take an underdog that shoots badly at the free throw line rather than a favorite that might be laying the 6.
Oh, 150%. I would not, have any qualm with what you said, but because yeah, there aren't too many teams that are fouling up 3 to send the trailing team to the line. The trailing team, an underdog, you might be more keen to look for the ability to finish on bad shots, right? If they're expected to do poorly, well, maybe they're going to end up taking some off the dribble threes more likely than the catch and shoot. Maybe they're going to be up in the mid range on an ISO more often than a proper post up look. This transition isn't going to be happening nearly as much as the underdog if things are going poorly, because the opponent's going to be making shots. And guess what? You don't really run the transition off a make. And I'm sure it's happened once or twice, but it's tough. And it just by definition does not really. I think there are characteristics that matter more depending on how many points you get or lay. I think that's a really interesting thing to, point out. And there are definite characteristics that make for a more appealing underdog and a less appealing favorite. What I want from my underdog is probably a tenacity to fire from the 3, because if they're down 12, and then there's 2.5 minutes left on a -8.5 type line, college basketball, especially in the conference season, becomes so interesting. And I was tweeting this morning a little bit about the bet distribution I had today. I was like 66% underdogs, because it's not necessarily just because of this, but I love seeing those types of results from my stuff, because teams want to win. Most teams, especially in conference, what matters is your conference record. And the conference record is a money line record for us gamblers, right? So That's what teams care about. Teams are out there to win the game. It's great to win by a specific margin. Maybe you're considering that in conference if you're like going for an at-large bid against a weaker team in your conference, a la Fresno State or something in the Mountain West. But there are not many cases of that. Maybe Oregon State, I don't even know. They should lead that conference this year. I forget they're not in the Pac-12 anymore. It's unique. And you definitely want to remember that the general consensus here, what the coaches go out to do, what the teams go out to do, is win the game. So laying it, honestly, for me at this point in the conference, I have to be like so sure that a team is really going to get there, or we have to be talking like a single, maybe a 2-possession spread. But like once I get to like 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, I'm really, really picky about those types of plays.
Yep, and I think that that's so well said as well, because a team in a major conference where they know it's going to be a one-bid league, they're not concerned about whether they're winning by 5.7 points because they have no choice but to win their conference tournament in order to be able to make the NCAA tournament, whereas a team that might be on the bubble, insert your like number 7 team in the Big Ten, they might be wanting to win by margin just a little bit more, but I think
it could even go further than that. It could go further than that, though, right? Like the team that, in the mid-major that doesn't care to win by 7 might deliberately be allowing their opponent to score an easy basket without truly defending to waste clock. And they just might not care, but the score might be like out of reach by 3 possessions. And you're sitting there with your 5.5 and it's at 7 and they take an unguarded 3 in the last second. I mean, it happens all the time. And the favorite doesn't cover because of the meaningless bucket in the last minute because the game state is sealed. So I think you have to be cognizant of it.
And those are the games that we typically find on Scott Van Pelt's segment every single Monday. As Justin Perri, and we see those every single week, who does such great work over at Shock Value Bets, joining me right here on Cuz Soups. And Justin, I do want to throw this game out here as well, because certainly the Sunday slate, not quite what the Saturday slate is, but I want to get your thoughts on this North Texas versus Memphis game, because right now I'm seeing North Texas as a 9 to a 9.5 point underdog, total of 136. And I think that's just such an intriguing matchup because, as we know, North Texas, they put teams into clamps with regards to slowing things down. Memphis is a little bit more of an up-tempo team, but with North Texas, the way that they generate turnovers against a Memphis team that outside the top 300 returns of ball security, I feel like this could be a potentially rough matchup here for Memphis. And in a day where we really don't have a lot of night games, this is going to be one of the latest ones on the card. I think that this one could be very intriguing to wrap up Sunday.
Yeah, wow. I'm pretty shocked, that this is the last game of the night, 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, Memphis sitting there, 10-9 points makes some sense, playing this one at the FedEx Forum in the big NBA stadium. We over at SQ do like Memphis, but no more, no less than anywhere else. They're pretty firmly top 30, top 35 type team for us. Maybe a little bit lower on what North Texas is doing this year than some other places. Seeing the tempo, of course, for North Texas is as impressively slow as ever, but their offense this year is pretty on point, but the defense, I think, is maybe a little bit lucky at the moment, and maybe that's what happens when you're just that good. But finishing at the rim right now is 6.5% lower than expected for North Texas. That does impact a decent amount. Not really getting lucky or unlucky on threes on either side, so that is usually a big tell. I think what you're seeing is mostly what you're getting. They force turnovers at 24% of possessions. It's third best in the nation. I mean, we just saw on Saturday what it looks like when you have a team that can do that in UCLA, shutting down Nebraska for 3/4 of that game before the Nebraska offense got going, and their defense looked good too. Interesting spot for an under. I don't know if truly the defense of North Texas is what it has been billed as for the last few years. You're talking about reputation that largely has preceded them for years past. And just, shutting down opponents. They were a top 20 defense in 2023, 22, and then they've been top 50 the other years in the last 5. So this is a good defensive program. That's what they pride themselves on. They are the best team in terms of shot qualities, defense on off the dribble threes. No one does it better. And they also force a very high amount of them, along with forcing a very high amount of mid-range shots. The only thing is that, the rim defense hasn't been great, but it's such a low percentage of shots there. It's going to be very intriguing to see how Memphis does, because this is a Memphis team that does have the offense, top 20 offensive shot quality, top 10 in 3-point efficiency, really efficient spacing, attack the rim efficiently, rebound very well offensively. That's probably going to be the key. I mean, if North Texas can limit the second chance points for Memphis, they should be able to cover that 9.5. But if Memphis is getting the opportunities off the boards, they're going to sort of, defeat the goals of North Texas and get enough possessions where that 9.5 won't be enough.
Yep, it's going to be a really fun one, and I do take a look at what we're going to be getting on Sunday. We're going to have ourselves a really nice slate, and you just heard that man go to work. Justin, you do such an incredible job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. It's always fun talking shop with you. We've got conference games back in our lives. I know you're excited for these 100 million billion game Saturdays, much like I am, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
For sure. Going to work is what we do every single day over at Shop Quality Bets. We have a show on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, a live betting show. It's very different than every betting show you've ever seen because the games are happening while we're betting. We use our proprietary software to use the expected score of the games that are on right then and there to bet on those games. So it's really fun. We do 45-minute bursts Tuesday and Wednesday nights, Saturday afternoons at 2:45. Give me a follow over on the old Twitter, and they stream right there. It's super easy. It's the most fun thing we do. And then check out shopqualitybets.com for everything else. My pick of the day is like 171 and 133 in the last year or so. It's pretty good. Again, the data speaks for itself, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So, Greg, I appreciate the opportunity, as always, to talk some shop, give some previews, talk a little bit about the data, and, of course, give me a call whenever, and we'll run it back.
Absolutely. Justin does such an incredible job taking a look at this incredible game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Justin for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on our game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. Back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to get Justin Perri aboard. He does such an incredible job over at Shop Quality Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Justin for joining me right here on the podcast. And now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GN_D1. We're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger games in terms of conference first, and then the smaller conferences. The Patriot League, the NEC are going to be the main two, but we might have some SWAC, some MEAC in there as well, America East as well. Those are going to be the games at the bottom. So how about if we do get things started with game number 819, 820 on the betting board. Penn State is going to be playing us at Indiana, and Indiana does find themselves as an underdog of 6 points. So on scheme between 156.5, seeing as high as a 157 as well. And I'm willing to go over in this spot. I recognize it's an early AM game, but that said, this has been a Penn State team that has been absolutely gunning it, and they've been a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And I want to talk about an offense that is humming. All of a sudden, Indiana has been able to get things going as well, being able to score a combined 161 points in their last two games, albeit against Winthrop and Rutgers, two teams not necessarily playing the most savory defense. And for this Penn State team, for as fast as they do play, they've been able to lock down with regards to their defense. They've given up 66 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, but did see them give up 80 to a Northwestern team that's really not up-tempo a few days ago as well. But this is a Penn State team that is a top 25 unit in terms of turnovers for us on a per-possession basis, and they go up against an Indiana team in which the biggest kryptonite for them is their turnovers, as Indiana's turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest outside the top 225 in terms of ball security. Now, Indiana should be able to win the battle down down low. Umar Ballo, 13 points, 9.5 boards, nearly 2 blocks per contest. Mackenzie Mbakbo and Malik Renew, these two guys have been able to combine for about 11 or so rebounds per game as well, so they've been able to do a good job with that regard. But this is a bunch of Penn State that has been much better on the glass than they were a season ago. Yannick Niederhauser, who comes on over from Northern Illinois, he's been able to give the team about a block and a half per contest, 6+ rebounds per game at 7 feet tall. He's been able to give them some nice rough and tumble, and as a result for Penn State at home, they're allowing opponents to only rebound about 23.5% of their missed shots. That's actually a really good mark. And for Indiana, you have some nice outside shooting with having Trey Galloway shooting 43% from three-point range, thrown in there, 4 assists, 7.5 points per contest, but a lot of inconsistency with guys like Cannon Carlisle and company. They're only shooting about 32% from distance as a collective. Miles Rice has never been the world's most amazing three-point shooter, and for this Penn State unit, they've got Ace Baldwin, who's able to give you 8.5 assists. That's a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. Not necessarily an amazing three-point shooter, but 15 points per game. Penn State as a whole shooting 50.5% from the floor, 76% the free throw line, and 35.5% from three. Was that kick shooting 44.5% from the outside. It is an Indiana team that has been a little bit hit or miss with regards to the way that they've been guarding the three-point line as well. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a rough ordeal for Indiana, and that's a big reason why. Even though Indiana has the advantage down low, with Indiana allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from three on the road, it does allow Penn State to be able to get their system and be able to get the job done. I set my line at a 7.5. Want to lay it in at a 157 or less, and on the over 821, 822 on the betting board. Florida Atlantic is on the road against Eastern Carolina. East Carolina is a 2.5 to a 3-point home underdog. Total's game is 150.5 to a 151. Made Florida Atlantic a 2.5 point favorite. So 3 is a minimum buy point on East Carolina. East Carolina very much looking to be able to hold it down with regards to their defense, but it's been really a rough season for them in general. They are well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For East Carolina, obviously the defense has been much better at home rather than on the road, but they are finding themselves about 309th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But this is also a Florida Atlantic team that they get really sloppy with the ball. They've been turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest. Florida Atlantic leaving a lot to be desired on the defensive side of things as well. They are well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Florida Atlantic, 362nd in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So there should be a lot of wide open looks from three-point range for really both of these teams. That's it for East Carolina. Who's going to be able to knock them down other than R.J. Felton? R.J. Felton, 17 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists per contest. Shoots about 31.5% from three-point range. You've had Jan Farrell shoot about 40% from three, but only at about 6.5 points per contest. I like C.J. Walker, Jordan Riley. These two guys have been able to combine for about 31.5 points per contest. Both give you 6+ rebounds per game, but neither of these guys shoot at least 30% from three-point range. Meanwhile, for Florida Atlantic, Baba Miller has been able to give you really nice versatility. He's thrown in there 7 boards, a steal, a block, 11 points per contest. And for Florida Atlantic, they do shoot 34.5% from three-point range, but again, the turnovers have been a little bit costly for this team. Caleb Glenn has been able to give you about 13 points per contest, but Florida Atlantic has been really rough with regards to their defense, and they're looking to run it and gun it. They're a top 30 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and as a matter of fact, for this Florida Atlantic team, they have given up at least 77 points, and I believe now all but 2 out of their last 6 games. And for the team, if you want to go a little bit further, they have given up at least 74 points against D1 competition in all but 3 of their games ever since opening night against Indiana State. Meanwhile, it's an East Carolina team that they themselves have really been, shall we say, not so great on defense as well since the beginning of the month of December. 74+ points given up in 4 of their last 5 games, but have been relatively incapable of giving you too much offense as well. So it's an interesting circumstance. I did set my total at a 150.5. Now that we're getting to a 151, I just don't know if these teams can enough threes. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to take 3+ here with East Carolina. 823, 824 on the betting board. Mount St. Mary's plays us in Niagara. Niagara is an underdog of 6 points. Total on this game is 139, and I made Mount St. Mary's a 5.5 point favorite. So at a 6+, that is going to be my buy point on the points with Niagara, though I am seeing this as I am doing the podcast with this ticking a little bit downward right now. I'm seeing a lot of 5 to 5.5. Personally, I would rather take a 6 rather than lay a 5 personally, just because with Mount St. Mary's, they have had so many turnover woes this season. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of just ball security in general. They've been doing a little bit of a better job recently, and to the credit of Mount St. Mary's, they've been able to find a lot of good rebounding for the team. Joy Cordelia, Terrell Art, along Dola Adbayo have all been able to give you at least 6 rebounds per game, so they're rock solid with that regard. But I do think that for Niagara, even though they're going to be outgunned on the glass, this has been a team that over the last 2 seasons has been a top 50 unit if you combine last year and this year. With regards to their road 3-point shooting percentage, I have no idea why, but they've been shooting better from 3-point range when they've been on the road rather than at home, and they've got a hole as greater than the sum of its parts backcourt right now, being headlined by Olumide Abdulin, who's been able to give you about 11 points, 5.5 boards. He's only shooting about 30% from 3-point range, but the Valparaiso transfer in Jahari Williamson, he's been able to give you a lot from the outside, shooting 40% from 3. It's a team that as a whole, they shoot 35% from 3. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, not as much down low as they had a season ago, but you've been able to have Jalen Martinez lend some versatility at 6'11". He's able to give you 5 boards, so he's been able to do a pretty rock solid job with that regard. It is a Mount St. Mary's team that does have Dallas Hobbs, who's been able to go off for 13 points per contest, but they deal with some injuries in the backcourt, which has caused Xavier Lipscomb, who going into this year was more of a career high 30s, 40 or so percent 3-point shooter, to having to be doing a lot of the point guard duties for this team, and as a result, it has led to their outside shooting being a little bit down from where it has been in past years for Mount St. Mary's. A little bit of a mid-tempo team that right now is shooting just 31.5% from 3-point shot. To their credit, they've been really good in terms of being able to guard the arc. A top 30 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage at less than 30%, but you don't really have a lot in that backcourt other than Hobbs in terms of a scoring aspect of things. So do think that it causes for this game to be a little bit more groggy, a little bit more slow. I did set my total as a result at a 135.5. I'm in on the under. Right now seeing a lot of 5.5 swap up. Personally, like I said, would rather take a 6 with Niagara rather than lay the 5 with Mount St. Mary's. 825, 826 on the betting board. Sacred Heart going to be playing us to Canisius. Canisius is an underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. The last game is between 144.5 to a 145.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Sacred Heart. I did set them as an 11.5 point favorite for Sacred Heart. You've got good versatility on this team, and to call it what it is with this Canisius team, it is very much a work in progress. As for Canisius, you do have 2 guys that do a nice job of headlining the team, and Paul McMillan and Tana Copa. Copa has been able to give you 11.5 points per contest, shoots in that neighborhood of about 39.5% from 3-point range, and then Paul McMillan has had to do a bit of everything. 19.5 points, right around about 2.5 assists per contest. You've had Anthony Bernard be able to step up with regards to a facilitation standpoint with about 3.5 assists per game, but this is a Canisius team that's outside the top 3 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They draw the fewest fouls of any team in all of college basketball, so their one shining grace is that they shoot north of 81% of the free throw line, but they never get to the free throw line, so that's been an issue for them as they can't get the ball inside the arc either. 332nd in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, and on the flip side, you've got a Sacred Heart team that they should be able to do a rock solid job down low. By the way, Canisius looking for their first straight up win this year as well. That's a little bit less than savory, but that said, you've got Anquan Hill, who missed the first 4 or so games of the season. He has come back in great form. 12 points, 4 boards. I don't think that the 52% 3-point shooting is going to be a mainstay for the 6'9" combo player, but he's been doing a great job with that regard. They dealt with a little bit of an injury to Tanner Thomas towards the beginning part of the season, but he's come back and he's been their top scorer with about 12.5 points per contest for Sacred Heart. As a whole, they do a relatively solid job down low with Brandon Johnson also being able to give you about 6+ rebounds per game. And when it comes to this Canisius team, you really have absolutely nothing on the glass for this team. You've got one guy that gives you north of 3.2 rebounds per game. That'd be Cam Polisi, who stands right around about 6'5". He's been able to give this team a little bit over 5 rebounds per game, but other than that, they're just getting dominated on the boards as well. And with this Canisius team, with them not being able to find good, clean, efficient shots, the fact that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 359th. Just all sorts of issues for this team. Sacred Heart should be able to win that battle down low. It's a Canisius team that has really given it up with regards to their scoring, and it's not like this has been some sort of a amazing Sacred Heart defense, and Anthony Latina teams typically play a little bit more up-tempo, and in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, this Sacred Heart team right now checking in more in the neighborhood of about 221st in the country, though they're giving up more than 25 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. I did set my total at a 145.5. I think that that's going to iron out a little bit more, so at a 145 or less in on the over, and willing to lay up to 11 with Sacred Heart. 827, 828 on the betting board. This will be a game that I write up. Siena is going to be playing us Iona. Iona does find themselves as a underdog of 2 points. I wrote this up when this was more around 1 to 1.5. Total on this game, it is 133.5, and I'm going to be writing up Siena in this spot. I'd be willing to lay up to 5 with Siena. I'm not sure why this opened up as 1. It's with this Iona team, it's just been all sorts of rough for them this far this season. They are ranking well outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, because outside the top 300 in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, in terms of taking care of the ball, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, 356th in the country, and in terms of their three-point shooting defense, they're outside the top 300. They're allowing opponents to shoot well north of 37% from three-point range, and I like the way that Jerry McNamara is building up this Siena team, as you've had Major Freeman along with Justice Schultz be able to combine for about 29.5 points per contest. Schultz has been able to shoot 37% from three-point range. With Siena, they do turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, and this is an Iona team that does rank in the top 20 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they turn the ball over 16 times per game. DeJure Reeves has thrown in there 17 points, 2.5 steals per contest. To his credit, he's shooting 35% from three-point range, but he is really the only out of their top 6 scorers that shoot above 30% from three-point range. Down low, they've been able to hold their own, as you've got Yafat Moody, who's been able to give you up 6.5 boards, 7.5 points per contest. Throws in there 6.5 per game as well. They were without Clarence Rupert for a little bit of time, but he's now back to the fold. He was part of that Elite 8 run that St. Peter's had back in the day, as he's been able to give you about 5 rebounds. James Patterson throws in there 6 boards per contest as well, but Adam Nanji is a true freshman that's having to run the point. Doesn't give out 3 assists per game, but those 3 turnovers per contest have been a little bit less than savory. Not a Siena team that's going to be generating a whole bunch of turnovers, but even though they don't necessarily have that one guy that's going to give you 5+ rebounds per game, I do think that they're going to be able to do enough to be able to hold their own down low. This coming up against an Iona team that, again, they've really been giving it up from the outside. This is very much a Metro Atlantic conference that is based around what you're able to get from the outside, and even with Iona having some of those top flight rebounders and being 70th in the country with regards to rebound percentage, Siena, they're still in the top 200 with this regard as well. I do think that they've got a little bit of untapped potential with the Xavier transferred Reed to Sherme, who's only been able to give you about 4 points per contest, but at 6'7", has a little bit of versatility, and I do think that Siena finds a way to get the job done with Iona just playing such sloppy basketball right now and turning the ball over a ton. To the credit of Iona, 70 points or fewer allowed in 3 out of their last 4 games, and for Siena, coming off of a 103-point performance, so that was in double overtime against Manhattan. They've been able to get to at least 70 points in each of their last 3 games, but this has been a team that's been able to play some pretty solid defense recently as well. So, circumstance where I'm going to be in on Siena, I'm willing to lay up to 5 with them, and did set my total more around a 135.5, so I'm also going to be taking a look at this total over, as we have seen Siena be able to do a nice job from three-point range against an Iona team that really doesn't guard the arc. 829, 830 on the betting board. Another game, though, right up, as you've got Manhattan, and they're going to be on the road. They're going to be going up against Rider. Rider does find themselves as a favorite of a point total on this game between 146 to a 147. I set my total at a 140.5, so I wrote up the under. I just don't know where this total is coming from. I recognize that Manhattan has been a bit of a better offense this year, but are 147th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and Riders outside the top 300, and Riders slowing things down to a crawl, 339th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They've dealt with a little bit of an injury to Zion Cruz, but even when he's been out there, he's given the team 7.5 points per game while shooting less than 20% from three-point range. You've got Jay Alvarez along TJ Weeks combining for about 24.5 points per contest, and Alvarez is shooting 39% from three-point range, but Rider, with their 12.5 turnovers for have slowed their tempo, as they're outside the top 225 in terms of ball security. It's a Manhattan team that's shooting about 34% from three-point range. I like what I'm seeing out of Shaquille Bender. He's been able to give the team 11 points per contest. 3-point shooting still leaving something to be desired. Your main facilitator in Jaden Winston has been able to get guys involved. He's been able to give out about 5 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game. And Will Snyder, good versatility, block and a half, 7 boards, 15.5 points, 39% 3-point shooter, right around about 6'7", 6'8". So I've been liking that. I do think that Ryder is going to be able to rise up a little bit more than what they have throughout the season. I did set them as an underdog of 2.5 points, so I just don't see why they're the favorite here, because even though I do see positivity with this Ryder team, this Manhattan team has just been playing much better, especially on the glass, as well as you've also got a pair of guys alongside Center that give you 6+ rebounds per game. Wesley Robinson, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points, 6 boards per contest. Messiah Gilliard has been able to throw in there about 6 boards per contest as well. You've been able to get some good production on top of that out of Devin Dinkins, who's come in from George Mason, and he's been able to supply the team with about 12 points, throws in there 2.5 assists per contest, and Riders having a tough time taking care of the ball. Rebounding has been okay with Tariq Ingram, giving you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but I mean, it's just a Rider team that's very rough with regards to their offense. I don't think that they do their part with the total, and I don't think that they win the game, so I do like outright on the money line Manhattan, and with regards to the total, I wrote it up. I'm in on the under. 831, 832 on the betting board. Marist playing goes to Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac does find themselves as a very small underdog of 2 points. Total on this game, it is 136 after 137. Set my line at 1.5. So 2 is my buy point here on Quinnipiac. For Quinnipiac, I don't know if they quite pull this game off outright on the money line, but been able to have Xavier Lewis come back into the lineup after he was missing for about 4 or so games this season, and he's done a nice job of being able to dish it out. 4+ assists in 4 out of the last 5 games, really ever since his return, as his scoring has been down from past years. He's only giving you about 5 points per contest, but still about 5.5 assists, less than 3 turnovers per game, so that should be able to allow the big men of Quinnipiac to hold in this game, as you've got Paul Otinho along with Armani Moore, who will be able to combine for 15.5 rebounds per game. Otinho at 6'7", 6'8", 12.5 points, 37.5% three-point shooter. Now, Quinnipiac is shooting 25.7% from three-point range. I do think that this is going to rebound a little bit, as last year, aside from Matt Blonich, it was largely the same core, and they shot more like 35% from three-point range. I don't know if they're going to duplicate that, but certainly I do think that this is in for a little bit of a rebound, as Ryan Mabry, he's only giving you about 6.5 points per contest, but he's still shooting about 32.5% from three-point range. I think that he'll be able to get it going, and this is a Marist team that has not been the same team on defense that they have been in past years, as Marist last year was a top 35 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This year, this Marist team, they're checking in more around about 86th in the country, though, albeit they are giving up about 15 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. But the hallmark of this Marist defense has always been doing a rock-solid job, being able to guard things from inside the arc, but this year that hasn't been quite the case. Marist more around about 59th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Last year, that was within the top 50, and then you've got Josh Passarelli, who's been headlining the team with regards to scoring, shooting 44.5% from 3, 17.5 points per contest. You've got a whole greater than the sum of its parts rebounding approach, as each of your top 5 scorers give you at least 3.9 rebounds per game. Only one guy gives you north of 5 boards. That'd be Jaden Doherty, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 6 boards. So good versatility there, and has shot 50% from three-point range, but I do think the Quinnipiac, with all their size, they're going to be able to hold in there. It's a Quinnipiac team that's been pretty rock solid in terms of being able to generate turnovers as well. A top 75 unit in terms of turnovers for us on a per possession basis. Marist taking a little bit of better care of the ball, and for this Marist team, we have seen the defense really be able to rise up. In regulation, they've now given up 65 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, while it's a Quinnipiac team that they themselves have stepped to the plate with this regard, 70 points or fewer allowed in 3 of their last 4 games. So I did set my total 137.5. Do think that this is a nip and tuck game, because I do think that it's going to be so close. You have the propensity to be able to get overtime, and you do have the propensity for late game felling. I am in on this total over Quinnipiac when they're at full force with Xavier Lewis and all these guys in the fold. Typically a top 80 team with regards to total possessions per game, so just by a hair like the over, and at 2+ like the points here with Quinnipiac. 833, 834 on the betting board. It's Northwestern on the road against Purdue, and Purdue is a favorite of 6.5 to 7 points total on this game. You're going to be finding it anywhere between 137 to 137.5. This was an opener of 8. Now that we've gone down to a 6.5 in some spots, I'd be willing to lay with Purdue. I did set Purdue as a 7-point favorite. Now, if you get a situation between a 6.5 to a 7.5, I would rather take a 7.5 rather than lay a 6.5. So that's sort of where I stand on this one, but with this Purdue team, it has been a unit that has been looking a little bit better recently. They played a really brutal non-conference slate. That's a big reason why they're outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. When you're playing against the likes of Texas A&M, when you're playing against Auburn, Alabama, like, man, they really sacked their non-conference slate. Even some of their mid-major games, like having to play against Yale, that's relatively brutal as well. And Braden Smith has been one of the best guards in all of college basketball. 15 points, 2 steals, 8.5 assists per contest, shooting 43.5% from 3. And Purdue has been a flamethrower from 3-point range. They're a top 20 team with this regard. They're shooting 39.5% from 3-point range. Now, they themselves have been allowing a few too many looks from 3-point range, and even though they're not quite the same team on the boards as they were last year, I mean, this is still a team that has been above average with regards to rebound percentage, 160th in all of college basketball with a 15.5% rebound rate. Drake Hoffman right now has been able to give you 6.5 boards, 18 points per game, and he shoots north of 40% from 3-point range, but for Northwestern, they've got a really dynamic duo in Brooks Barnizer, Nick Martinelli. Both of these guys give you 20.1 points per contest. Barnizer, 4.5 assists, 2.5 steals, a block, 9.5 boards. Right now shooting 34.5% from 3, while Martinelli shooting 45.5% from 3-point range. Now, Fletcher Lawyer on the flip side has been shooting north of 45% from 3-point range. He's able to give the team double figures as well, so that's going to be tough for Northwestern to be able to match up with. But Northwestern has been so good in terms of their ball security. This team is in the top 35 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, so doing a lot of what they did when Boo Buie was in the fold last season. And for Ty Berry, I do expect a little bit of a rebound for him, only averaging about 8 points per contest. Prior to him going down with injury last year, he was averaging double figures, and he's shooting closer to 42 to 43% from 3-point range. That's down to about 38% from the outside this season. For Northwestern, they do allow opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range, so a little bit of an issue there, but they are winning the turnover battle by an average of 5.4 turnovers per game. It has been a Purdue team that has been getting a little bit more loose with the ball than what what you'd like to see. Much of that was that game against Penn State where they had a bunch of turnovers, so they had about 11.5 turnovers per contest. But I do think that with the way that Northwestern typically gets outgunned on the glass, with Purdue taking a massive setback there, that is going to allow this Northwestern team to remain lively. Like I said, if I am left between a 6.5 to a 7.5, I would rather take the 7.5 with Northwestern rather than lay the 6.5 with Purdue, because you do have a Purdue team that has really regressed with regards to their defense. So Northwestern outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, and that's a big reason why I could only set my total at a 137. So here at the 137.5, in on the under at a 7.5 or more, taking the points with Northwestern 6.5 or less. That's a lay for me on Purdue. 835, 836 on the betting board. UConn plays us to Providence. Providence has found themselves as an underdog of 15 points. Total on this game between 136.5 to a 137, and did make my total 136.5, so 137 is my buy point on the under. This has been a Providence team that just really has not been able to get out of their own way with regards to a scoring standpoint. 199th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now for UConn, it's been a little bit up and down for them this year, but they're still number 4 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Their home metrics are much better than their road metrics. Much of that is because they played against, it's got what it is, a pretty Sherman soft non-conference slate where you're going up against teams like East Texas A&M, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Mississippi Valley State, teams like that. You're really able to beat up on them. But that said, this is a UConn team that they have won every single game that they have played outside the state of Hawaii. So there's that aspect of things as well. And Alex Caravan should be able to absolutely take over this game. He's right now logging for the team 16.5 points, 3 assists, shooting 43% from 3-point range. And even with not getting a lot out of Aiden Mahaney, he's only been able to give you about 4.5 points per contest. Offense has still been really efficient. Hassan Diarra is not necessarily too much of a scorer at 8 points per contest, but 6.5 assists, fewer than 2 turnovers per game. You've got Terrace Reed, who's been able to supply the team with 8 rebounds per game, and Providence just does not have a way to be able to match up with that. Oswin Isarwusne, oh man, that is a tough last name to say. I mean, the gentleman named Uswin has been able to give you about 5 points, 5 boards per contest, so he's been able to give you a little bit more there. And Christ Edasodonko has been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game, comes in from St. Joe's. He's got relatively good size at 7 feet tall and is able to pop it from 3-point range, has to give you a lot of that though. And for Providence, they're one of the bottom 75 teams in the country at being able to take care of the ball, turn the ball over about 13 times per contest. They got back Bryce Hopkins for about 3 games. We have not seen him since that DePaul game about a month or so ago. They're going to try to get him going at some point here in Big East play, but I mean, even if he comes back for this game, who knows what you're going to be able to get out of him. Bentley Joseph, Jaden Pierre, these 2 guys have been able to combine for about 24 points per contest, and between the 2 of them, shooting 36% from 3-point range, but it's been a disappointment where you've gotten out of Jabari Abdul-Rahim. This guy last year was averaging double figures over at Georgia, was really cooking at about 36% from 3-point range, 88% at the free throw line, and it's given this team 6 points per game. You have not been able to get really anything whatsoever out of some of the more versatile players on the team. Corey Floyd has been able to give you 8 points per contest. I just really don't have a lot of faith in this Providence team, and it's a UConn team that, even though they're not quite the same defensively as they were a season ago, again, you take a look at their numbers outside the Maui Invitational, and if you take out the Maui Invitational numbers, this is still a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home and home alone. Top 25 team with that regard. So at a 137 or higher, I'm in on the under. Must be mentioned with UConn as well. It seems like Liam McNeely is going to be out of the fold for this game, and despite that, number has been going up a little bit more. That makes my buy point on Providence of 15 plus. So seeing what we've got here, going to be willing to take a shot on the points, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. As we go to 837, 838 on the betting board, Drake is going to be playing against Murray State, and Murray State does find themselves as a underdog of 10 points, seeing a 10.5 out there as well. Total on this game between 126.5 to a 127. Did set my line at a 9.5, so anything of single digits, I was going to be willing to lay with Drake. Double figures is my buy point on Murray State, and for Murray State, ever since the Diamond Head Classic, things have been a little bit ugly for them. Heck, that game beforehand against Indiana State, they did have a little bit of a less than savory performance out there, but that said, I'm going to be willing to take points with Murray State. Murray State has been able to get some relatively good backcourt play, as you've got Kylan Milton, AJ Ferguson, Jacoby Wood as a trio being able to combine for about 39.5 points per contest. Milton has been a little bit underwhelming with regards to 3-point shooting at about 30%, but Wood is shooting 38% from the outside. Team has only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per game. Now, they're going against a Drake team that's been a top 35 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but this Murray State team does a really good job of running you off the 3-point line. They're allowing opponents to only take about like 17.5 threes per contest in terms of threes attempted per game. They're a top 40 team with that regard, and this is a Drake team that doesn't have an over-reliance on the three ball, so they're not going to be too bad there. It's a Drake team that shoots about 34.9% from the outside as a collective. They're actually a top 30 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. Bennett Sturts has been the main man for this team. He has been incredible. 6 assists, 4 boards, 2.5 steals, 18.5 points per contest, and then Mitch Mascari, who is that main three-point shooter, he's shooting 47.5% from three-point range. He's the only guy in the roster, by the way, that shoots above 33.5% from three-point range. You've only got 2 guys on the team that shoot above 31% from three, and yet they do shoot 34.5% from the outside. It goes to show how much he and Daniel Abreu take it from the outside. Cam Maniwu has been rock solid down low. He's been able to give the team 7 rebounds per game, and this is a team that is in the top 30 nationally with regards to percentage of opponents' missed shots that do not result in an offensive rebound. They do not let you get second chance opportunities, so it's going to be big against a Murray State team that they've been a bunch that has really struggled on the offensive glass themselves. They're only grabbing about 9 offensive rebounds per game, as I was expecting a little bit more out of Kyron Lindsey. He is able to give you about a block and a half per contest, but only about 5 rebounds per game after, as a freshman at Georgia, he was that top rebounder before he decided to leave the program, so a little bit off-putting there. It has been a Murray State team, has been a top 130 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so doing a relatively solid job there. Do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a defense-oriented game, as Drake has been well outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, but I do still think that this number has gone downward a little bit too much. Drake has still been very efficient with regards to being able to make twos, and I think that Murray State has the ability to be able to keep this game just close enough for some late game fouling. I did set my line at a 9.5, so Murray State's down 7 to 8 points with a minute remaining. You get those fouls, and I do think that we're going to start to see these totals in Drake games go just a little bit more northward as they get a little bit more accustomed to the Ben McCollum style, so I did set my line at a 129.5 with regards to total. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Murray State at a 10 plus 839, 840 on the betting board. It is Southern Illinois. They hit the road. They're facing off against Illinois State, and Illinois State does find themselves as a pretty sizable favorite at 6.5 to 7, and your total on this game, it is between 142.5 to a 143, and with Illinois State, I did set them as a favorite of 10.5 points, did write this one up. I'm going to be willing to lay it. For Illinois State, this team is a top 25 unit with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and they go up against a Southern Illinois team that it's just been really skidding downward for them. I wish I could put it any other way, but with regards to this Illinois State team, they've been able to do a nice job being able to find some offense, 50th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, while Southern Illinois 269th with this regard. A little bit surprising because I've always loved Scott Nagy as a coach. He had that Wright State unit last year in the top 10 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but it's a wholesale change for this Southern Illinois team, as last year they were one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. They bumped up to the top 135 with regards to total possessions per game this season, and they have a few nice guards I like. Ali Abdu-Diba along Kennard Davis have been able to combine for about 29.5 points per contest. With Davis, he shoots 34.5% from three-point range, but when they start this Southern Illinois team, the fact that they are turning the ball over about 13.5 times per contest. So good news for them is that they go up against an Illinois State team that is in the bottom 100 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but with all the firepower that you've got in the Illinois State backcourt, as out of your top 6 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 40% from three, with the lone exception being Dalton Banks, 10.5 points, 4 assists, steal and a half per contest. And it's really going to take it out of a Southern Illinois team that's been well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are 314th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage. You've also had a nice spot-up three-point shooter and Landon Wolf come in, shoot 41% from three-point to really be able to elevate this Illinois State team, and they should be able to hold their own on the glass. Out of their top 4 scorers, all but one of them give you at least 4.6 rebounds per game, with your main guy having 6.5 boards, 14.5 points per game, and Chase Walker for the Southern Illinois team actually got off to a halfway decent start, but now they've just really hit a skid where the defense, it just has not been able to hold up at the point of attack, as they now have given up 68 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, but against a bunch of really low tempo teams. Meanwhile, this Illinois State team, they're starting to fly, 80 plus points in 3 out of their last 5 games. It has been the defense that has been a little bit up and down, given up at least 73 in 3 of their last 5 games. That includes a game against Northern Illinois, and they're one of the worst teams in all of college basketball. So I do think that you're going to get a little bit more of an up and down game in this one. I do think that Illinois State exploits a really bad Southern Illinois team in terms of being able to guard the arc, which is why I made my total 148.5 in on the over, but writing up Illinois State, willing to lay up to 10 with them. 841, 842 on the betting board. Here's another game I wrote up. Washington plays us Illinois. Illinois is a road favorite of 8 points. Total on this game is 155, and I wrote up the under. I set my total at a 148.5. I don't think that we're going to see Illinois score north of 100 points like they did a few days ago, and this has been an Illinois team that has actually been really good in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are number 8 in the country with this regard, and they don't allow you to get a second chance. Opponents are grabbing 19 15.4% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in their home games. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. And then you've got all sorts of versatility with this Illinois team. Kasparis Jakanuskis has really been the main man, giving you 43% three-point shooting, 16.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest. But Will Riley is a guy with size that's able to shoot 35.5% from three. Kylan Boswell was a little bit rough to begin the season, but he's been able to give the team some good facilitation recently. A combined 19 assists in the last 3 games, only about 5 turnovers. He's went off for 15 plus points in 4 of the last 5 games, so he's starting to find it in the system. Trey White, he had himself a big game a couple days ago against Oregon, 20 points, 11 boards in that one, as he's been a little bit touch and go. Now he is a full go for this team, and Tomislav Ivic at 7 feet tall is able to shoot 38% from 3, a block, 9 rebounds per game, and for Washington, they're going to have a tough time responding to that. Now Zune Bial is looking a little bit better, coming off of double figures in their win against Maryland, which was a big win for Washington, and obviously, the travel spot is rough for Illinois, but they've spent a couple days now on the West Coast. They had to play that game at Oregon, so they are used to the West Coast now. Just a little bit more on Grado Sabor. Well, he's been great for the team. 14.5 points, 9 boards, 3.5 assists, 2 steals per contest, but who's going to be able to help him out? Tyler Harris has shot 47.5% from 3, 12.5 points per contest, but Washington outside the top 140 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a relatively mid-tempo team that also shoots 64.5% at the free throw line. We talked about Justin Perri beating these teams that are bad at the free throw line, and they certainly are that. You got Tyree Ianacho, who gives you some versatility with 2.5 assists, 3 rebounds per contest, but only about 5 points per game. You never know what you're going to be able to get out of Makai Mason as well. This guy either gives you like 20 points or he gives you 2. There's really not a lot of in between with him, so I do think that that's a little bit of a rough ordeal, even though Illinois not quite the same defense on the road rather than at home. I do think that Washington, despite the fact that they've gotten to at least 70 in each of their last 5 games, going to get bottled up in this one. Rode up the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 points with Illinois. 843, 844 on the betting board. It is Oregon playing us to Maryland, and Maryland does find themselves as a underdog of 3.5 to 4 points. This game, it is 150. I said Oregon as a 1-point favorite, so being able to get 3.5 to 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Maryland, but I actually wrote up another under in this spot, semi-total at 145. Prior to their just absolute calamity a few days ago against Illinois, Oregon was 27th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're starting to get a little bit more of Supreme Cook, who missed a few games earlier in the season. He's out giving you about 8 points per contest. That helps out Nate Biddle down low, who's got versatility at 7 feet tall, 13 points, 8 boards. He's able to pop it from 3, but it's only shooting about 24.5% from the outside. It's an Oregon team as a whole. They do a relatively solid job taking care of the ball, 11.5 turnovers per game. You don't necessarily have a ton with regards to your top 3 scorers in Biddle, TJ Bamba, and Jackson Shellset. With regards to their 3-point shooting, though, Bamba and Shellset have been able to combine for about 2.5 steals per game, so they've done an okay job generating a few takeaways. But on the flip side for this Maryland team, you do have a pair of guys in Derek Queen along Julian Reese that should be able to control things down low with a combined 17 rebounds per game. It's a Maryland team that does rank at the top 30 nationally in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're really not allowing a whole heck of a lot easy right now. They're a top 60 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, it is an Oregon unit that's more around 82nd in the country with this regard, but when they're at home, they're actually allowing teams more easy buckets rather than on the road. Their road 2-point shooting percentage is one of the best in all of college basketball. And for Maryland, I do think that the 36% 3-point shooting is going to start to come down a little bit, but Jacoby Gillespie, Sultan Miguel, these guys are combined for 25 points. They're combined to shoot about 41.7% from 3-point range. Roddy Rice is a relatively good spot-up shooter that's giving you about 11.5 points per contest. Deshaun Harris-Smith just continues to be a massive disappointment for this team, but for Maryland, they've got a really nice starting 5. They should be able to do a nice job on the glass, and they keep things very clean with regards to turnovers as well. They're only turning the ball over about 10 times per contest, and neither of these teams are really super-duper up-tempo. I'm not going to call either of these teams playing at like a snail's pace or anything like that, but for Maryland, they always do a relatively solid job staying within themselves. They're still about 110th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Oregon 109th, so very similar tempos out of both of these teams. I do think that both of these defenses step up a little bit more in this game, so I wrote up the under, and with Maryland being able to get north of a point, I'm going to be willing to take those points. 845, 846 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up another under, as we've got Kansas on the road against Central Florida. Central Florida does find themselves as a home underdog of between 5 and 6 points, and tonight's game is between 148 after a 149, and I did write up the under because Kansas has played only one over thus far this season. They have been your best under team in all of college basketball for this Kansas unit. It's one that has had a little bit of a tough time with regards to backcourt play. You saw Hunter Dickinson giving you his normal 15 points, 10 boards, double-double, and DeJuan Harris keeps things very clean with regards to this offense. Assist-to-turnover ratio, that's north of 3.5, 10.5 points, 5.8 assists, 1.6 turnovers per game. It's only shot about 31% from 3. Throughout his career, he's actually been a much better 3-point shooter, but I do think that they're going to bottle up a Central Florida team that has been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. I like what they're getting in the backcourt from Darius Johnson, who's been able to generate for the team north of 2.5 steals per contest, 4.5 assists, 15.5 points per game. And now you're getting Jalen Sellers back as well. Has been back out there for 2 games. They combined 14 points in those contests, so they're easing him back relatively slowly, about 13 minutes per game. So I don't think that he's going to play his full allotment of minutes, but that helps out this team that has been relying a lot on Jordan Ivy Curry for production, 2.5 assists, 15.5 points, shoots about 35% for three-point range. And as a whole, it's a Central Florida team that shoots 35% from the outside. Kansas has been a top 45 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis with good versatility out of Zeke Mayo, 14.5 points, 3 assists, shoots 37% from 3. But for this Kansas team, even though they don't turn the ball over a ton, they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. I've just noticed in the step-up games, they've done a good job with their defense. They haven't done such a good job with regards to their offense. As for this Kansas team, you take a look at what they've done recently, and they've given up 62 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games, albeit the defense on the road had a little bit of a hiccup against Missouri, along with Creighton giving up 76 points in both of those games. But in both of those games, offense also went down the toilet bowl for Central Florida. It's been hit or miss with regards to their defense, but they've been able to do a little bit of a better job recently. They have now given up 66 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 6 games, so do like what I'm seeing there. Their numbers with regards to possessions per game, a little bit warped by the fact that they played that triple overtime game against LSU earlier in the season, but this has also been a Kansas team that's been pretty sure-handed on the boards as well, not allowing a lot of second chances or a top 60 team in the country with this regard. Meanwhile, for Central Florida, after they were a good team on the boards last year, more around about 120th in the country with this regard this year. So did set Kansas as a 6-point favorite at a 5. I'm going to be willing to lay with them. I do think that this is going to be a nice bounce back for them, but do think that Kansas continues to play tough defense while the offense still tries to find itself a little bit more with some of these guys like AJ Storr, not necessarily being the world's greatest fits as of right now. So wrote up the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Kansas. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 847, 848. Another game that I wrote up, Memphis playing us to North Texas. North Texas is finding themselves as an underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. So on this game is 136 to 136.5, and with Memphis, I made them a favorite of 4.5 points. So I wrote up North Texas, grabbing the points with North Texas. This team is in the top 5 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going against a Memphis team outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers per possession on offense. They are turning the ball over north of 13 times per game. Now, Memphis, one of your best 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. North Texas has given up a few open looks from 3-point range, so that could hurt them a little bit, but you've had PJ Haggerty give you 22 points, 3.5 assists, 2 steals per contest, but also 4 turnovers per game. With this Memphis team, really, other than Nick Jourdain, who's shooting 30.5% from 3-point range, everyone that has made at least 1 3 outside of Jourdain shooting at least 38.7% from 3-point range. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression with that regard. North Texas always gets that slow, grimy style. They're outside the top 325 in terms of total possessions per game, and North Texas, a top 50 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So not only do they play slow, they're actually efficient while playing slow. Rondell Walker, Maddie Sissoko have been able to combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game with Mule Sissoko. He chips in there about a steal per contest as well. Good versatility out of him, while Eaton Wright, he's been able to supply the team with about 13.5 points per contest, as North Texas, always a relatively good shooting team, shooting about 36% from the outside, 77% at the free throw line, and this is a Memphis team that, well, they do a really nice job of being able to make their threes. They also do give up quite a bit from the outside as well. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And the question becomes with North Texas, again, they just cut off Memphis from being able to hit those shots from beyond the arc. And I do think that the answer is yes, because with North Texas, overall this season, they're allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range in that neighborhood about 31.8%, but it actually goes down to 28.2% in a road/shoot record environment. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. So I do think that that's going to keep the scoring low, and that's going to be able to keep North Texas lively in this game. Wrote up North Texas with the points. I set them as a 4.5 point dog. Also went on the under, set my total 132.5, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-617, 306-618. It is Lehigh on the road against Loyola Maryland, and Loyola Maryland is an underdog of 1.5. Total on this game is 141.5. Set Lehigh as a 1.5 point favorite. So we're going to be waiting for a little bit of line movement here. If we could get down to a point or less, want to lay with Lehigh 2 or more, that is going to be my buy point on Loyola Maryland. Doing this as right now the only openers I'm seeing are over at Bookmaker, so that's an offshore book that's really not necessarily the most representative, so we should be seeing some more openers when this podcast is up. But that said, with this Lehigh team, they've really slowed things down to a crawl. Outside the top 280 in terms of total possessions per game, but they've been able to have Caleb Higgins really do a nice job of just giving this team everything that they need. 18 points per contest. He pulls in their 5 boards, so he's leading in both of those categories. Ben Knotzman has been been able to do a good job of being the main facilitator for the team with just under 4 assists per contest. Now, it is a Lehigh team that they shoot 37.5% from three-point range, but they really take their time in order to be able to get those shots, and they're really lacking something down low. They're outside the top 275 with regards to rebound percentage, and they do go up against the Loyola Maryland team that's been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the arc. They've been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and Loyola Maryland has been a top 205 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up more points per possession at home rather than on the road. The Elich brothers have been the main guys for them, as you've got Veljko Elich being able to give you about 6.5 points, 4.5 boards per contest, was dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's been able to come back for that, but you've got Milos Elich, who's been really the main man. 9 boards, 14.5 points. He's able to pop it from 3 at about 6'10", albeit only at about 28%, and as a whole, Loyola Maryland is shooting 30% from three-point range. That is a bottom 75 mark in all of college basketball. They've been able to find a little bit more with rate and speed at the point guard spot, being able to give you about 3 assists per contest, so he's been able to ascend a little bit with that regard, but I do think that this is going to be a Lehigh team that should be able to find a way to be able to get the job done outright on the money line. I just don't know if they're going to be able to give you too much more than that, as this is a Lehigh bunch that has really not been able to do a great job on the glass. Loyola Maryland going to have the advantage there, and Lehigh outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, going up against the Loyola Maryland team has given up at least 69 points each of their last 5 games. This is a Lehigh team that has been able to get past the 66-point plateau in just 1 out of their last 4 games, and that was against a non-D1 team. So good old situation. Something's got to give. Do think that things get slowed down. Semi-total 135.5 in on the under. 1 to lay up to a point with Lehigh. 2 or more taking those points with Loyola Maryland. 3-6-6-19, 3-6-6-20. Boston U plays us to Army. Army is an underdog of 4 points, and your total on this game is 132, and I actually set my total at 135.5. I'm in on the over for Army. This has been a team that's really sped themselves up. Last year, they were one of the slower teams in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Army now, in terms of total possessions this year, they're in the top 50. Now, Boston U continue to play slow and controlled, 341st in the country with this regard, but it is an Army team that I do think that with Jalen Rucker and company, they have a chance to be able to get the job done outright. I could only set them as a 1.5 point underdog, so I'm not going to take them on the money line, but I'm going to take the 4. Rucker has been able to give you 18 points per contest, while AJ Allenpatch down low, he has a chance to be able to win the battle in this game, as he's been able to give the team 9 boards, 11.5 points per contest. It is a Army team that certainly still lacks a little bit at the free throw line, shooting about 68.5% there, but Boston U is a bottom 50 team in the country in terms of ball security. Despite the fact that they play as slowly as they do, they turn the ball over north of 14 times per contest. They've been able to get a little bit in the backcourt out of Tyrone Alexander. He's been the main scorer for the team with 13 points, 5.5 boards per contest, and this has still been a team that's been very stout on the interior, a top 125 defense in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're one of the better rebound rate teams that you're going to find in mid-major college basketball. They're now getting Otto Landrum back, who was one of their top rebounders from a season ago. A little bit slow going, but now has given the team about 4 boards and has been versatile with about 2 assists per game. Miles Brewster, their top scorer from a season ago, though he has regressed a little bit, shooting just 27% from 3, 9.5 points per contest, but I do think that Army going to get things going a little bit more up-tempo. Love the way that Ryan Curry has shot north of 40% from 3, north of 4 assists, 13 points per contest, and I do think that that's enough for Army to remain lively in this one. It's an Army team that has been giving it up on defense. They've given up at least 70 points at each of the last 5 games. Have a Boston U team that they have gotten past the 61-point barrier in 1 out of their last 4 games against C1 competition. So in this situation, something's got to give. I do think that you get a bit more offense in on the over and in on the points with Army. 306-621, 306-622. Central Connecticut is on the road against Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst, an underdog of 8.5 points. So on this game, it is 129.5. Did somebody total 134? I'm in on the over with Central Connecticut. Fully recognize that this has been a really good defense at generating turnovers, a top 125 unit with that regard, and Mercyhurst outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. But I do think that Mercyhurst's offense is going to see a little bit more of a burst. Now they're at home. They're playing, I believe, their second D1 home game in the history of this program. Jeff Plynudis has been able to give you 15 points per contest, shooting north of 90% of the free throw line and north of 41% from 3-point range. It's a Mercyhurst team as a whole. Not amazing, but not bad from 3-point range at 32.7%. They also, when they get to the free throw line, have been able to hit those, as they've been shooting darn near 78% at the free throw line. That's a top 50 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Central Connecticut team that they've been very wise in the way that they've been able to generate turnovers, and they don't foul very often. They're a top 10 team with that regard, and that's a big reason why I did set them as a 10-point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number with a bunch that is, I believe, number 1 in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed per game. They can get gashed a little bit from the outside, allowing opponents to shoot 32.5% from 3-point range, but I love what I'm seeing out of the backcourt duo of Devin Hade along with Jordan Jones. These 2 guys have been able to combine for 26 points per contest. Neither of these guys shoot it amazing from 3-point range. That's what you look to Darren Smith Jr. to do, as he's been shooting 47.5% from 3-point range, and Abdul Momoa has been your main man down low with about 1.3 blocks per contest. You don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 5.4 rebounds per game, but they do have 4 separate guys that give you at least 3.9 rebounds per game. That allows them to remain lively against a Mercyhurst team that is one of the shortest teams in all of college basketball. When you see these teams come up from the D2 level to the D1 level, typically they don't have a lot of size. Mercyhurst finding that out the hard way. 355th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound percentage. Not to call Central Connecticut amazing, but they're more around about 165th with that regard. It is a Mercyhurst team that, despite the fact that they play slow, they're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they are 310th with this regard, while Central Connecticut has been able to hold up at the point of attack. They're checking in more around about the top 100, and in road games alone, they are a top 50 team with this regard, but I do think that they take it to this Mercyhurst team, find some nice three-point looks, and they're able to get this total over and get the job done by double figures. Set Mercyhurst as a 10-point underdog, so one to lay with Central Connecticut and in on this total over as well. 306-623, 306-624. It is a Wagner, and they play us to Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson hopes to be fairly priced as 1.5 to 2.5 point underdogs. So on this game, going to be getting it at a 134 to a 135. Set my total at a 133.5. I'm going to be in on the under, as Wagner is a bottom 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Just have not been able to find anything whatsoever on the offensive side of things. Now, Fairleigh Dickinson, a top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Wagner is coming off of scoring at home a whopping 52 points in a loss to Chicago State. Not great, to say the least. And for Fairleigh Dickinson, they do have one of the top scorers that you're going to find in major basketball, and Terrence Brown. He's been able to do a nice job supplying this team with 21 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. Now, I do think that there's a little bit of upside with this Wagner offense, because you do have Javier Esquera, who's been able to give you 5 assists per contest. They've dealt with a lot of injuries throughout the season. Ramir Moore being out has really been hurting this team. Zay Blake was a north of 44% three-point shooter when he was at UW Green Bay a few seasons ago. He's been able to find his bearings with double figures in each of the last 3 games. He dealt with injury, and he's back in the fold for this team as well, but you don't have a lot down low. RJ Green has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and Fairleigh Dickinson, always one of the shorter teams in all of college basketball. That's not going to hurt them too much, because you've also got someone like Joel Emmanuel, who's able to give you 11 points, 4.5 boards, good shiftiness as he shoots 40% from 3, and it's a Fairleigh Dickinson team that, as a whole, they're shooting 37.5% from 3-point range, and on the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot only 27.5% from 3-point range. For as bad as their defense is, they actually do a really nice job of guarding the perimeter with a Wagner team that doesn't necessarily have ideal size. They themselves at home are allowing opponents to shoot 38% from 3-point range. I think that that's going to keep Fairleigh Dickinson relatively lively in this game. I do think that there's going to be a lot of hunger for Wagner after they lose at home to Chicago State, but I could only set them as a 1.5 point favorite. You're at the 2.5. Not going to take the money line, but I'm going to take the points with Fairleigh Dickinson. Also, with the way that they guard the arc, I think that this causes for a lower scoring game. Set my total at a 133.5 in on the under, and the points with Fairleigh Dickinson. 306-625, 306-626. Navy is playing us to Lafayette. Lafayette does find themselves as an underdog of 2 points with your total at a 139, and I did set Navy as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Navy. This has been a little bit of a departure from what we've seen in their defense in past years, while outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis for this Navy team. They're about 200th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Lafayette team that's very much looking to play slow, and for Navy, they're still not a team that's necessarily going to be running it and gunning it per se. For Navy, they're about 220th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Lafayette right now checking in at 287th in terms of total possessions per game, so do you think that this total is one too high? Set my total at 135.5. I'm going to be in on the under, but with this Navy team, you've got Don Draper down low, is able to give you 7+ rebounds per game. Austin Mangini is going to be your top scorer in this game. He's been able to supply this Navy team with north of 16 points per game, going up against the Lafayette team that, once again, I'd like to use this phrase, and I'll use it once again, whole is greater than the sum of its parts with them. You really don't have anyone that gives you north of 11.5 points per contest, so Justin Vanderbond, the true 7-footer, has been able to give you 2 blocks per contest. He's able to supply the team with 5+ rebounds per game, so that's going to be a little bit of a load for this Navy team, but Alex Cholkin, right now, 11 points per contest. He's been solid. Mark Butler does have an assist-to-turnover ratio hovering right around 3, 7 points per contest, but he's only shooting about 20% from 3-point range, and this is a Lafayette team I don't think is going to be able to really burn this Navy team from the outside. They only shoot about 33.5% from 3-point range as a collective. Lafayette, okay at generating turnovers, but not necessarily amazing there, while this Navy team has taken a little bit of setback with the way that they've been able to generate turnovers, but It is a Lafayette team that they themselves just have had a tough time being able to put the ball in the basket. 65 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. And if you look at the entirety of the season for this Lafayette team, if you take out any games that have went to overtime, this has been a Lafayette team that's been held at 72 points or fewer in all but one of their games thus far this season. So I think that you're in for a relatively low-scoring slog. I do think that with both of these teams, having relatively deep teams in general, I do think that makes things very interesting. But it's a Navy team that they shoot about 74% of the free throw line, and crunch time, they should be able to get the job done there. And I do like what they've been able to get down low with about 8 boards, 10.5 points per game out of 8 in KOE, and I think that that's going to be enough to be able to keep up with Vanderbilt. So did set my line at a 3.5, willing to lay up with Navy, and set my total 135.5. I'm in on this total under as well. 306-627, 306-628. It is St. Francis of Pennsylvania playing us to Stonehill. Stonehill is a favorite of a point / a pick'em. Total on this game between 142 to 143. Made Stonehill a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on this relatively pick'em line, as you do have a St. Francis bunch that has been able to get quite a bit of production out of Bobby Rosenberger. Rosenberger is able to provide you with 5+ boards, north of 12 points per contest. Riley Parker has been able to help out the cause with about 4 assists per game. And for this Stonehill team, it's been a case where this team has been well outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate. But Todd Baronga, I think, is actually the best, shall we say, low post presence in this game. He stands right around about 6'7". He's got some good shiftiness as he's been able to pop it from 3-point range at a clip of about 44%, 12.5 points. He chips in there 2 assists per game. And Amir Nesbitt has been a nice facilitator for this team. And assist to turnover ratio that's hovering right around 2. Both of these teams have been well outside the top 250 with regards to their overall rebound percentage, but Stonehill has been able to do a much better job of being able to guard the arc this season. They're in the top 190 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while St. Francis of Pennsylvania at home is allowing opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range. That's an issue when you go up against Joshua Morgan, who's been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range, throwing in there about 13.5 points per contest, and Louis Simona has been shooting north of 45% from 3-point range on the road, 48.5% from the outside. He's able to give you 10 points per contest with a St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that just truly doesn't have a lot of size. Rosenberger right now being your main rebounder is a bit of a concern, and additionally, Ace Talbert has been out of the fold ever since really the 5th or so game of the season. He was giving the team 10 points, was shooting it relatively well from 3-point range, so that leaves St. Francis of Pennsylvania even more shorthanded. You just have not been able to have some of the ascension from some of the guys that returned from last year as well, like Chris Moncrief. Last year showed some really good signs, was shooting 36.5% from 3-point range, only about 3.5 points per contest thus far this season. So I do think that Stonehill, with their outside abilities, going to be able to find a way to get the job done. They've gotten to at least 69 points in 4 of their last 5 games, but have a St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that I just don't know if they're going to be able to do their part with regards to the total. They have gotten past the 70-point plateau just once against a Division I team since the beginning of the month of December, but that said, this has been a Stonehill team that they themselves have been speeding things up with regards to their tempo just a skoge more. So I did set my total at a 143. At a 142, like I'm seeing out there, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over, and we'll take Stonehill on this pick'em line, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 306-629, 306-630. Bucknell plays host to Colgate, and Colgate does find themselves as an underdog of a point. And total on this game, you're going to be getting it between a 134.5 to a 135, and I did set my total at a 135. Actually seeing a 136 out there at the 136. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under, plus I'd rather take a 135.5 under rather than a 134.5 over anyway in this spot, because you got a Colgate team as well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and it's just not the same Colgate team that we've seen in the past, as it's a bunch that typically is shooting well north of 38% from 3-point range. They're doing a great job from the outside, and for Colgate, it is big that they're getting Jeff Woodyard back in the fold, as he's their main rebounder with 6.5 boards, 7 points per contest, was missing for 8 games earlier in the season, so that certainly elevates them, considering they're only shooting about 33% from 3-point range. Nicholas Louis Jacques has been able to give you about 12 points, shoots 37% from 3-point range. You've been able to get a little bit of something out of Jalen Cox as well in terms of versatility. 4.5 boards, 4 assists, steal and a half, 10 points per contest, but he shoots in the low 30s from 3-point range. Kyle Carlissimo, who came over from Eastern Illinois, he shoots 38.5% from 3, but has never really found a good role for the team with about 4 points per contest, and I do think that Bucknell is still going to be able to win the battle down low even with Woodyard back, because you've got the true 7-footer Noah Williamson, who's been able to supply the team with 6.5 boards, 13.5 points per game, not necessarily shooting it well from 3-point range, but Josh Bosco shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range, 14 points per game. Ian Moda has been dealing with a little bit of an injury ever since Thanksgiving, so that's a little bit of an issue. 6'6" combo player that's able to shoot it well from 3. Who knows when he's going to be back, but Elvin Edmonds, he's able to give give you some facilitation with about 2.5 assists per game. He dealt with an injury earlier in the season. Him coming back is big for a Bucknell team that has really sped things up this year. They're in the top 75 with regards to total possessions per game. I think that also having Pip Ajay, who's been able to give you a little bit over 4 rebounds per game, believe that he began his career over at Mercyhurst. That's going to be able to help this team out a little bit more on the post. And this is a Colgate team that, despite the fact that they do have Jeff Woodyard back, how much is he going to help out a team that's currently 325th in the country with regards to rebound percentage? Not that Bucknell's been amazing at right around about 277th, but Bucknell clearly has the advantage there. And for this Colgate team, a big giant departure with regards to defense in the way that they've been guarding the three-point arc as well. Colgate is allowing teams from three-point range to be able to make about 35% of them on the road, 34.3 at home. They're about 240th in the country with this regard. Meanwhile, it's a Bucknell team that at home they're allowing opponents to shoot just 29.5% from the outside. Do you think they get a little bit of a lower scoring game, seeing that 136 in on the under, and with Bucknell made them a 3-point favorite, so won't delay the point. 306, 631, 306, 632. Holy Cross is on the road against American, and American finds themselves an American size favorite at 5 points. Draw this game between 137.5 to a 138, and did set my total 136.5. I'm in on the under. For Holy Cross, this is a unit that is still outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but really neither of these teams is playing with any sort of tempo whatsoever. Both of these teams outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, but both of these teams have really been giving it up from three-point range, especially American on the road. They're allowing opponents to shoot 38.8% from three-point range. It's a Holy Cross unit that they've been buckling down a little bit more with regards to their defense, considering last year they were outside the top 345 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So the fact that they're allowing opponents to shoot 32.8% from three-point range, quite a bit of a triumph there. American has been much better with their three-point shooting defense at home, though. They're allowing opponents to shoot less than 30% from three-point range. I do think that that's going to iron out a little bit more for American. Good versatility with Mark Rogers, give you about 15.5 points, 6 boards. You've got a guy in Colin Smalls who's come up very big, shooting about 40% from three, but American last year was shooting north of 37% from three-point range, more around about 33% this season, and along with that versatility that you've got for American, they've been dealing with a few injuries, like Jeff Spruce has been out of the fold for about half the season, and you've got that on the side of Holy Cross as well. As Joe Nugent has been able to give you 12 points per contest, shoots the high 30s from three-point range at 6'6". Max Green is 6'6", 5 boards, 3 assists, 14 points. He's shooting about 39.5% from distance, and Holy Cross as a collective is shooting 40.2% from three-point range. I don't think that this is going to be a mainstay. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression here. Question is, how much regression is there going to be against an American team that is ranking about 326th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but needs to be thrown in there as well. American giving up about 21.7 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than on the road. And for Holy Cross, I do think that their regression is going to come here, but not enough to really affect them in terms of not being able to cover the spread. I did set my line at a 4.5. I do think that you get a little bit of balance in the terms of this game, a little bit of regression from Holy Cross, a low possession game, but this Holy Cross team doing enough on the boards to be able to hold in this one, and for Holy Cross only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, should be able to keep them lively. So we'll take 5+ here with Holy Cross, and I'm going to be in on this total under, and we wrap things up with another game I wrote up, 306, 633, 306, 634. Long Island plays us to Chicago State, and Chicago State an underdog of 7 points on this game between 137.5 to 138.5. Yay, verily, for the fact that Chicago State got their first outright win a few days ago against Wagner. Going to be a rude awakening for them going up against Long Island. I'm going to be willing to lay it. I set Long Island as a 12-point favorite. I wrote that up as Malachi Davis should be able to take over this game for Long Island. 17 points, 3 assists, only shooting about 27.5% from three-point range, but generates a steal and a half per contest as well. They go up against a Chicago State team that they just are not good at the free throw line, and Long Island, most of their points are given up at the free throw line. This Long Island team in the top 10 in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis, and they allow about 27.5% of their points that opponents score from the free throw line. That is a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. Chicago State on the road is shooting 65.3% at the free throw line, and it's a Long Island team that they're a top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Each of your top 4 scorers give you at least a steal per contest. Now, one of those guys is Brett Davis. He comes over with Gerald Gillian, who actually was the coach over at Chicago State last season. He's now the associate coach for this Long Island team. He has been out of the fold for quite a while, but returned in that game against Lemoyne a few days ago. He had 6 points, 3 steals in that one, so that's going to be a force multiplier for this Long Island team. And for Chicago State, right now they're outside the top 325 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and they don't have a single guy on the roster that's giving you north of 9.2 points per contest, with Noble Crossford along Jalen Forrest both give you about 9 points per contest. They combine for about 8.5 to 9 rebounds per game as well. And this has been a Chicago State team that's been a top 225 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, but they as a collective also shoot 29.5% from three and 35.9% from the floor. That is just absolutely terrible. Quincy Allen, one of their top players, has been dealing with a little bit of an injury as well. Gabe Spinelli has come in, has given the team a steal, 3 boards, 8 points per contest, but you really don't have any sort of size with regards to this team. Not that Long Island is amazing on the boards, but you've got Shadrach Lassou, who's been able to give you about 6.5 or so rebounds per game, gives you quite a bit on the offensive glass as well. And this is a Chicago State team that does rank in the top 25 with regards to possessions per game. And despite the fact that they play at that pace, they have now scored 64 points or fewer in each of their last 6 games, which is just absolutely befuddling to me. I did set my total at a 136.5 as a result, so I'm going to be in on the under, and I wrote up Long Island laying the number, and that'll wrap things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Justin Perri. He does such great work over at Talk While You Best. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters here, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.